Prologue. Much later, after wars and victories, after moments that felt like endings, I learned something important. Canthar never tells only one story at a time. While I fought demon armies, mastered the green light, and built a life with Tess, other threads were quietly moving through the world. Not enemies. Not allies. Just stories waiting for the right moment to be told. There are people whose journeys run alongside mine but never cross it, at least not yet. People shaped by the same summoning magic, the same unseen forces that pulled me into this world, yet who experienced Canthar in entirely different ways. This book is still my story. The battles ahead are still mine to face. What comes next still belongs here. But someday, another story from this world will be told, one that begins elsewhere in Canthar, seen through different eyes, revealing truths I didn't know while I was living my own. That story does not start today. It does not interrupt what comes next. It simply waits. And when it begins, it will change how everything before it is understood. Chapter 1: Ink and Shadows. I wandered through the bustling marketplace, weaving between merchants and colorful stalls. The air smelled of spices, freshly baked bread, and the faint tang of magic-infused trinkets, familiar now in a way I never would have believed years ago. After a few twists and turns, I found a quiet, tucked-away bookshop, its wooden sign creaking softly above the door. Inside, the scent of parchment and ink wrapped around me like something warm and familiar. The shelves were packed with leather-bound tomes and enchanted supplies, and my eyes immediately settled on a journal of deep mahogany. Its pages were crisp, untouched, waiting. I ran my fingers over the cover, feeling the smooth polish beneath my hand, then paid the shopkeeper and carried it carefully to a corner table. As I settled in with a steaming cup of tea, my thoughts drifted backward over the years that had brought me here. The summoning that tore me from Earth. The demon wars that nearly broke Canthar and me. Tess, whose presence had anchored me through chaos and loss. And the green light, mysterious, overwhelming, a power that had reshaped battles and rewritten my fate more times than I could count. I opened the journal and began to write. Each stroke of ink felt deliberate, almost sacred. Faces. Places. Victories. Losses. Writing became a kind of meditation, a way to relieve the past while measuring just how far I'd come. Seeing everything laid out on the page made it harder to lie to myself but easier to understand who I'd become. Before I left, I bought a second journal. It was for my mom, Judy Thrush. I imagined her filling its pages with her own story, life on Earth, the shock of my summoning, the quiet fear and determination that carried her all the way to Canthar. I wondered how her words might intertwine with mine someday, two perspectives shaped by the same impossible world. As I wrote, the lessons surfaced naturally. Love. Patience. Leadership. The cost of war, not just in lives lost, but in pieces of yourself you never quite get back. The green light had taught me, too. Power without understanding, without restraint or connection, was just another way to destroy what you were trying to protect. Preserving memory mattered. Truth mattered. A soft laugh broke my focus. I looked up to see Tess, or maybe Elena, peeking into the shop, teasing me gently about my obsession with journaling. The warmth in her voice pulled a smile from me, easing the quiet intensity that had settled over the page. But as I returned to writing, I noticed small things. Shadows that lingered a fraction too long at the edge of my vision. A faint ripple in the magical currents around the shop, subtle enough that anyone else might have missed it. I paused, pen hovering, sensing that the world beyond these pages hadn't revealed all of its secrets yet. I didn't know what those disturbances meant. Not yet. Still, I kept writing steady, honest, chronicling a life that had become both extraordinary and deeply human. A life I had fought to protect. A story I wasn't finished telling. And somewhere beyond the ink and shadows, I could feel it. The next chapter was already waiting. Chapter 2: A Different Kind of Beginning. Helping my mother navigate Canthar's adoption system felt stranger than any battlefield I'd ever stood on. I explained it slowly as we walked, how children awaiting families were cared for, how records were kept, how placements were decided with care rather than politics or power. Canthar took adoption seriously, almost reverently, and yet every rule, every form, every quiet hallway made my chest feel tighter. Because this time, I wasn't searching as a parent ready to raise a child. I was searching as someone hoping his child would have a safe future. The adoption house was quiet, tucked away from the noise of the city. Soft light filtered through tall windows, illuminating rooms filled with toys, blankets, and unspoken stories. Every step echoed. Every breath felt heavy. I'd faced demons without flinching, but this place tested me in a way no enemy ever had. Judy was calm beside me. Too calm, maybe. But when she saw the baby girl for the first time, something changed. I saw it instantly: the way her posture softened, the way her eyes lingered, the way her breath caught just slightly. She didn't say anything at first. She didn't need to. The connection was immediate, instinctive, the kind that doesn't ask permission or wait for logic. I felt my doubts surge all at once: guilt, fear, the old question that never fully left me. Did I make the wrong choice? I turned away before she could see it on my face. Judy noticed anyway. You didn't fail her, she said gently, as if reading the thought straight from my mind. Love doesn't disappear just because it changes shape. I swallowed hard. She deserves more than we could give her, I said quietly. And she's getting it, Judy replied. Because you cared enough to make the hard choice. When we learned she hadn't yet been adopted, the decision came without drama. Judy chose to take her in, not to undo what Tess and I had done, not to rewrite the past, but to protect family in her own way. The adoption was completed quietly. No ceremony. No audience. Just signatures, soft words, and a future gently reshaped. Before we left, I held the baby one last time. She was warm. Calm. Alive. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't goodbye. It was simply a different kind of beginning. As I handed her back to my mother, something inside me loosened, a knot I hadn't known how to untie. Families, I realized, aren't always formed the way stories expect. They don't always follow neat lines or perfect plans. But they're no less real. And as we walked out together, I knew this moment, gentle, painful, hopeful, had changed all of us. Not by erasing the past, but by proving that love could endure it. Chapter 3: Work Worth Doing. With the demon army still absent, my focus shifted to something far more ordinary and somehow just as important. Money. Not for weapons. Not for fortifications. Not for war. But for a home. I returned to taking guild quests, the kind I hadn't touched in years. Smaller jobs. Local problems. Escorting caravans through winding roads, clearing lingering monsters that refused to die with the war, resolving strange magical disturbances that reminded me Canthar was never truly safe even in peace. The work felt different now. Before, every battle had been about survival or destiny. About stopping something terrible from swallowing the world. Now, every completed quest meant a handful of coins, and every coin brought me closer to something tangible, a safe place for my mother, and for the child she had chosen to protect. I escorted merchants through forests where corrupted magic still clung to the roots. I tracked beasts that had wandered too close to rebuilt towns. I sealed unstable mana pockets left behind by battles long finished. None of it felt heroic. None of it would make legends. But it mattered. Between quests, I walked through neighborhoods and quiet districts, looking at houses with a different kind of attention. I measured walls not for defense, but for warmth. I noticed sunlight through windows, distance to markets, the quiet of surrounding streets. Safety. Comfort. Stability. Things I'd never thought much about before. The green light stayed with me through it all, quiet, observant, steady. It didn't flare. It didn't demand. It simply watched, as if aware that this work, too, had weight. That building a life after war was its own kind of battle. Sometimes, on long walks home, I felt it an unease beneath the calm. Like the world was holding its breath. The demons hadn't returned. No horns sounded. No armies gathered. And yet, it felt temporary. Still, I didn't rush. For now, the peace held. And I allowed myself to believe that it was worth protecting, not with overwhelming power, but with effort, patience, and care. As I counted the coins from another completed quest, I realized something quietly profound. This wasn't just about buying a house. It was about choosing what kind of life came after the war. And for the first time in a long while, I wasn't fighting to survive. I was working to live. Chapter 4: A Place That Stays. The house sat at the edge of a quiet street, far enough from the city's noise to feel peaceful, but close enough that it never felt isolated. Solid stone walls. A modest garden space. Windows that let in morning light instead of shadows. It wasn't grand. It wasn't impressive. But it was real. I watched my mom take it in slowly, her steps measured as she walked from room to room. She ran her fingers along the walls, tested the weight of doors, paused near the windows as if memorizing the view. There was something fragile in the silence, like the moment before a decision settles into place. "It's yours," I said simply. She turned to me, confusion flickering across her face. "Nathan. You can live here as long as you want," I continued, before she could protest. "I'll handle the costs. Think of me as a landlord in name only." I managed a small smile. "No rent. No obligation." She shook her head immediately. "I can't let you do that. I don't want to be a burden." The word hit harder than any blade ever had. "You're not," I said, more firmly than I intended. Then, softer, "and this isn't about duty. It's not repayment. It's something I need to do." She looked at me, then really looked at me, and I saw the understanding begin to settle in her eyes. "I lost you once," I said quietly. "Or I thought I did. And when I finally found you again, I realized I don't want to just survive anymore. I want to build something. For you. For our family." The house creaked softly around us, settling like it was listening. My mom exhaled slowly, emotion tightening her expression. "You've grown," she said. "Too fast." "I had to," I replied. "But that doesn't mean I don't want you here." The silence stretched, not awkward, not heavy. Just full. Finally, she nodded. "All right," she said. "I'll accept. Not because I need charity, but because I see what this means to you." Something inside me loosened then. A tension I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. As we stood there together, the weight of it all hit me, not the wars, not the monsters, not even the green light humming quietly within me, but the realization that this mattered just as much. Providing safety. Offering permanence. Creating a place where someone I loved could wake up without fear. This wasn't survival. This was stability. And as my mom began talking about where she might place furniture, where the child's room should be, I understood something clearly for the first time. Canthar wasn't just the world I fought in anymore. It was the world I was choosing to live in. Chapter 5: The Weight of a Single Choice. The news reached us before the smoke did. A dragon had been sighted near a neighboring city, its outskirts burned black, watchtowers reduced to twisted stone, entire districts evacuated in panic. Survivors spoke of heat so intense it warped metal and cracked roads, of a shadow passing overhead that swallowed streets whole. I didn't need anyone to explain what would happen next. If left alone, a dragon doesn't retreat. It grows bolder. And bold dragons don't stop at one city. I thought of the streets I walked every day. Of the quiet house my mother had just moved into. Of the child sleeping safely under her roof. The green light stirred not violently, not urgently, but with a clear, steady awareness. This wasn't a threat I could afford to ignore. With the demon army still absent, this was the most serious danger Canthar had faced in months. Guild leaders debated mobilization. Nobles argued over jurisdiction and cost. Armies could be raised, but armies were slow. And dragons didn't wait. "I'll take it," I said. The room went quiet. No formations. No battalions. No drawn-out campaigns. Speed mattered more than numbers, and precision mattered more than spectacle. I wasn't reacting anymore, I was preventing disaster before it reached people who couldn't defend themselves. That realization settled heavily in my chest. Tess found me as I prepared to leave. She didn't argue. She didn't plead. She simply studied my face, reading the choice I'd already made. "Be careful," she said. "I will." She nodded, trusting my judgment even knowing the danger. That trust mattered more than armor ever could. The dragon's lair lay beyond scorched hills and fractured stone, where the land itself had begun to warp under constant heat. The air grew heavier with every step, ash drifting like snow. Even before I saw it, I felt the presence, old, immense, intelligent. When the dragon emerged, it didn't roar immediately. It watched me. Massive, coiled among shattered rock, scales glowing faintly like embers beneath stone. Its eyes were sharp, calculating, not feral, not mindless. "So," it said, voice like grinding stone, "they send you." That alone told me everything I needed to know. This wouldn't be a battle of chaos. It would be a duel. The dragon struck first, fire tearing across the ground in a sweeping arc that turned stone to molten glass. I moved before thought, green light reinforcing my body just enough to carry me through the heat without letting it spiral out of control. Every movement mattered. I didn't unleash the green light. I guided it tight, restrained, precise. Shields formed only when needed. Bursts of power landed only where they counted. The dragon pressed hard, claws and flame forcing me back again and again, its strength overwhelming, its presence suffocating. More than once, I was reminded of a simple truth. I wasn't invincible. One misstep sent me crashing through stone. Another nearly pinned me beneath collapsing terrain. The dragon adapted quickly, testing my reactions, my patience, my resolve. "You hold back," it observed mid-fight. "Interesting. Most wield power like a scream." "I don't need to," I replied. That was the difference. Where demons had pushed me to unleash, the dragon demanded control. Strategy over fury. Restraint over dominance. I waited. Watched. Learned. And when the moment came, I struck not with overwhelming force, but with perfect timing. The green light surged just enough. The dragon fell. Silence followed, heavy, absolute. I stood there, breathing hard, heat fading, ash settling. The city was safe. The threat ended before it could grow into something worse. By the time I returned, the story had already spread. A single warrior. No army. No backup. A dragon slain alone. Respect followed. So did fear. I felt it in the looks people gave me, in the way conversations quieted when I passed. Power draws attention, and attention is its own kind of danger. That night, as the green light rested quietly within me, unease crept in. Dragons didn't act without reason. Not like this. Not now. The demon war's calm suddenly felt thinner, like I stretched too far. And I couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper had stirred, and noticed what I'd become. The peace after the war wasn't breaking. It was being tested. Chapter 6: Quiet Preparations. The world stayed quiet after the dragon's fall, but it wasn't a comfortable silence. It felt like the pause before something inhaled. With no alarm sounding and no immediate threats demanding my attention, my mother found her own way to prepare for what she believed was inevitable. While I had been earning coin and preventing disasters, she had been studying herbs laid out across tables, roots drying near windows, monster materials carefully catalogued, and stacks of alchemy texts marked with notes in her familiar handwriting. Potion making, she told me, was her way of fighting back. Not with blades or magic, but with knowledge. She started me with the basics. Identifying ingredients by scent, texture, and mana signature. Understanding how certain roots strengthened the body while others restored stamina or sharpened the mind. She stressed balance above all else. Too much of one component could turn a remedy into poison, and rushing a mixture was the fastest way to cause an explosion. I learned quickly that potion making was nothing like combat. There was no instinct to rely on. No emotional surge. No green light carrying me forward. Only patience. Our first successful brews were simple healing drafts, their liquid glowing faintly as they cooled. Then came stamina potions, followed by mixtures designed to stabilize mana and resist corruption, preparations meant for long battles, prolonged exposure, and exhaustion beyond what most soldiers trained for. Working beside her was grounding. We talked as we worked. About small things. About life on Earth. About Canthar. About the choices we'd both made. The quiet, methodical nature of alchemy gave space for conversations that never found room during war or crisis. Each successful potion felt like progress, not toward victory, but toward resilience. Then something unexpected happened. As we worked on a more advanced mixture, one meant to sharpen focus and stabilize mental strain, the potion reacted oddly when I leaned closer. The liquid rippled, its color shifting subtly, the mana within it responding in a way neither of us had seen before. I stepped back immediately. The reaction settled. My mother frowned, studying the flask. It shouldn't have done that. I didn't touch it, I said. We exchanged a look. The green light stirred faintly inside me, not flaring, not reacting with intent, but present. A quiet awareness passed between us. We didn't try to force an explanation. We simply wrote it down, marking the observation carefully. Some things weren't meant to be understood immediately. As the day ended, shelves filled with neatly labeled bottles, tools not of destruction, but preparation. I realized then that this, too, mattered. Not just the ability to fight, but the ability to endure. To support others. To prepare for battles that hadn't yet begun. Weapons ended threats. Knowledge outlasted them. And as the green light rested quietly within me, I couldn't shake the feeling that even here among herbs, glass, and careful hands, its influence was already weaving itself into the future. The calm continued. But preparation had begun. Chapter 7, Calling Across Worlds. I noticed the change in my mother slowly. It wasn't dramatic. She still smiled, still worked, still cared for the child she'd taken in with a steadiness that impressed everyone who met her. But in the evenings, when the house grew quiet and the world seemed to slow, she lingered by the windows longer than before. Sometimes she'd stare into the sky as if waiting for something to answer. One night, she finally spoke. "I miss him," she said softly. "I miss my husband." She said his name the way she always had, Jr., followed by honey, as if saying it aloud kept the distance from swallowing it whole. The worlds between us felt heavier to her than any danger Canthar could offer. Demons, monsters, even dragons, those were threats you could face. This wasn't. I didn't pretend I could fix it. But I also couldn't do nothing. If there was even a chance, any chance, I wanted to try. So we turned to summoning magic. Carefully. Together, we studied old texts and fragmented theories, learning quickly that summoning from Earth to Canthar was nothing like the magic that had pulled me here. That process had relied on outside forces, ancient mechanisms, and a one-way momentum that shattered normal rules. Calling someone back across worlds was different. Harder. More dangerous. The texts were clear on one thing: emotional longing alone could not bridge the gap. Love might guide intent, but it couldn't tear through the boundaries between worlds. The barriers were stable, reinforced by laws older than any spell we could cast. Still, my mom wanted to try carefully. She didn't attempt anything living. No person. No creature. Just a symbolic anchor. A harmless focus meant to test whether the worlds would even listen. The spell circle formed cleanly. The ingredients responded correctly. Mana flowed, and then stopped. Nothing happened. No backlash. No explosion. No flicker of success. Just silence. The barrier held. She didn't cry. That hurt more than if she had. Later, she spoke about JR openly, about the life they'd built, about waiting, about the quiet fear that time would keep moving on Earth while she stood still here. The fear of being remembered as someone who vanished instead of someone who loved. I listened, knowing with painful clarity that this was something no amount of power could solve. Not the green light. Not summoning magic. Not strength or skill. Some distances weren't meant to be crossed easily. As the night faded and the candles burned low, I felt it again, that subtle tension beneath the calm. The sense that the world was listening, even if it wasn't answering. Summoning across worlds might one day be possible. But if that day came, I knew instinctively it wouldn't be free. And whatever price it demanded, none of us were ready to pay it yet. Chapter 8: When the calm breaks. The calm didn't end suddenly. It fractured. Reports began arriving one after another: scouts missing, border towns burning, demon sightings too organized to dismiss as stragglers. This wasn't a remnant force clawing its way back into relevance. This was an army. Stronger. More disciplined. And unmistakably prepared. I remember standing in the command hall as the final confirmation came in, feeling a strange mix of dread and clarity settle over me. This moment had always been coming. Every quiet day, every careful preparation, every choice to build instead of flee, it had all been leading here. The difference was this: Canthar wasn't caught unprepared. For the first time since I'd been summoned, the nobles didn't hesitate. There were no arguments over jurisdiction. No whispered accusations. No delay while favors were weighed and alliances tested. Trust, hard-earned, blood-paid trust, moved faster than politics ever had. Years of standing between their cities and annihilation had done what no treaty ever could. They believed me. Armies assembled with terrifying speed. Elena's elite forces mobilized first, disciplined and precise, their movements practiced and confident. Drake's family answered next, his banners rising beside hers, old rivalries shelved without ceremony. Then came the rest, noble houses from across Canthar, forces that once would have glared at one another across council tables now forming shared lines. Unity wasn't declared. It was necessary. My mother's work became visible in a way I hadn't expected. Potions, hundreds of them, were distributed throughout the ranks. Healing drafts passed from hand to hand. Corruption resistance mixtures were issued with solemn instruction. Mana stabilizers, focus tonics, endurance brews, tools born not of desperation, but preparation. I saw it in the soldiers' faces. Confidence. Not recklessness. Not bravado. Readiness. When we reached the battlefield, the air itself felt different. Heavy. Pressurized. The land bore the scars of earlier wars, but this time the ground trembled with something more deliberate. Demon formations moved with purpose, ranks advancing in patterns I hadn't seen before. This wasn't chaos. This was command. The green light responded immediately, not flaring, not raging, but present. Stronger. Clearer. Steadier than it had ever been. Everything I'd endured in the months since the dragon alchemy, restraint, responsibility, patience, had shaped it. shaped me. I didn't charge. I coordinated. Shields formed where formations thinned. Wounds sealed in clusters instead of individually. I reinforced monolines, countered demonic pressure points, redirected attacks before they could break morale. The green light moved like strategy made visible, quiet, efficient, devastating when necessary. Drake fought nearby. Not as a rival. As an equal. We didn't exchange words. We didn't need to. Where his forces advanced, mine stabilized. Where he struck hard, I covered the aftermath. Years ago, we would have clashed egos. Now we shared a battlefield. At first, it worked. The demons were pushed back. Lines held. Morale surged. Cheers rose, not triumphant, but hopeful. For a brief, dangerous moment, it felt like we might actually win this. Like preparation had changed the rules. That was when the ground screamed. New forces emerged, not reinforcements, but something else. Demons unlike the ones we'd fought before, their presence bending the battlefield around them. Their movements were unfamiliar. Their resistance unnatural. They didn't respond to tactics that had just succeeded. They had planned for unity. Lines buckled. Then broke. Orders were lost in the roar of battle. Units fell back into one another. Losses mounted faster than healing could keep up. I felt the green light strain, not from exhaustion, but warning. A deep, instinctive signal that this wasn't another wave. This was a new phase. I adjusted. Compensated. Redirected everything I could. Still, ground was lost. As the battlefield descended into controlled chaos, I felt it clearly for the first time since my summoning, not fear, but uncertainty. Survival was no longer guaranteed. Not for me. Not for anyone. The green light stirred again, deeper this time. Not demanding release, but asking a question. And as the fight raged on around me, I understood with chilling clarity. This war wasn't returning. It was evolving. And whatever came next would demand more than preparation alone. Chapter 9, The Breaking Point. The battle did not end all at once. It unraveled. What began as pressure became collapse. Formations that had held for hours fractured under relentless assault. Orders stopped reaching the front. Commanders vanished into the chaos, some pulled back, some cut off, some simply gone. Soldiers who had marched in confident and prepared now fought with fear etched into every movement. The demons did not slow. They advanced with terrifying certainty. I moved constantly, pushing the green light harder than ever before, shielding retreating units, sealing wounds mid-motion, reinforcing collapsing monolines as fast as they failed. Every pulse cost more than the last. My vision blurred at the edges. My body screamed for rest that would never come. Still, it wasn't enough. Where I stabilized one line, another broke. Where I saved 10, 20 more fell back. Hope so carefully built through preparation and unity shattered under the weight of reality. This wasn't a battle to be won by discipline alone. This was annihilation. I felt Tess before I saw her. That familiar presence, steady, sharp, alive, suddenly lurch. I turned just in time to see her disappear into the chaos, struck down amid fire and shadow. I screamed her name, forcing my way forward, tearing through space with raw desperation, but before I could reach her, something worse happened. I felt my mother. Not pain. Not fear. Absence. Her presence, quiet but constant, grounding in a way I'd only just realized, vanished from the battlefield in the same unbearable instant. 2 anchors. Gone. The world stopped. Sound dropped away. Motion blurred. The battlefield froze like a shattered painting suspended in air. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Couldn't understand how everything had been taken so quickly. This wasn't rage alone. This was grief. Terror. Loss layered atop loss until there was no space left to hold it. Something inside me broke, not explosively, but completely. The green light answered. Not as a surge. Not as power. As truth. It erupted outward, unrestrained for the first time. No shaping, no control, no limits. The light consumed everything around me, blinding, overwhelming, rewriting the battlefield in a single impossible instant. I didn't scream. I couldn't. The light spoke for me. And as it reached 100% for the first time, the world stood in stunned silence, caught between what had been lost, what had been unleashed, and what would never be the same again. The consequences had not yet arrived. But they were coming. Chapter 10: The Weight of Tomorrow. Time didn't rewind gently. It snapped. One moment, the world was blinding green, frozen in shock and ruin, and the next, I was sitting at a table. Wood beneath my hands. Warm air. Familiar voices. Tess was across from me, leaning forward, mid-sentence. My mother sat beside her, calm, focused, discussing troop movements and supply routes like the war was still something that might happen instead of something that already had. My stomach lurched. The room tilted. My vision tunneled. I felt cold, then burning hot, then hollow all at once. I gripped the edge of the table to keep from collapsing, breath coming in short, uneven pulls. They were alive. Both of them. Unharmed. Unaware. And I knew what was coming. Nathan. Tess asked. Hey, what's wrong? I couldn't answer right away. If I opened my mouth, I was afraid everything would spill out. The battlefield. The collapse. The moment they vanished. The soundless scream before the light consumed everything. The impossible truth pressed down on me until my chest ached. I had gone back. Not forward. Not sideways. Back. The green light had done the unthinkable and left me alone with the knowledge. I forced myself to breathe. Slowly. Carefully. I couldn't explain everything. I didn't know if I should. But I couldn't say nothing either. This war, I said finally, my voice hoarse. We can't let it happen the same way. My mother stilled. Tess didn't interrupt. I don't have time to explain how I know, I continued. Just, trust me. The way we're preparing now isn't enough. Not even close. Silence stretched. Then Tess nodded. Not because she understood but because she trusted me. My mother studied my face longer, sharper. She saw the strain. The grief I hadn't buried yet. Whatever conclusion she reached, she didn't question it aloud. Then we start again, she said quietly. And we do it better. From that moment on, everything changed. I trained harder than I ever had, not recklessly, not emotionally, but with ruthless intent. Every weakness I'd seen before, I addressed now. Every formation that had collapsed, I reinforced. Every command delay, every miscommunication, every hesitation, I cut them out. Armies drilled until exhaustion no longer broke them. Formations adapted to pressure they hadn't yet faced. Elena's forces refined their movements. Drake's units trained for coordination instead of competition. Old rivalries were dismantled by necessity and replaced with brutal efficiency. Judy's potions were perfected. Recipes adjusted. Distribution streamlined. Corruption resistance tested under stress. Mana stabilizers strengthened. There would be no scrambling this time. No last-minute miracles. Tess trained beside me every day. She didn't ask why I pushed so hard. She didn't demand explanations I wasn't ready to give. She simply stayed matching my pace, steadying me when the weight threatened to pull me under. My mother worked quietly, methodically, watching me with an understanding that went deeper than questions. Weeks passed. The armies that emerged from that time weren't just stronger. They were ready. And through it all, the green light remained steady, watchful, restrained, like it was waiting to see what I would do with this second chance. I didn't know what changing the future would cost. I didn't know what consequences time itself would demand in return. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. When the demons returned, this time, the world would not end the same way. Even if the price of defying fate hadn't revealed itself yet. Chapter 11: The Battle That Refused to Break. When the battle began, it looked the same. That was the cruelest part. The sky darkened under demonic mana. The ground shook as enemy ranks advanced. Fire and shadow tore into the land with familiar violence. For a heartbeat, just one, it felt as if time itself was mocking me, dragging us back toward the same ending. Soldiers fell. Lines bent. Pressure mounted from every direction. History wanted to repeat itself. But this time, it didn't. I saw the difference immediately. Where formations had once buckled under strain, they held. Shields overlapped cleanly. Rotations happened without panic. When demons struck at weak points that had once shattered our defense, commanders responded instantly, already moving, already countering, already prepared. No hesitation. Judy's potions flowed exactly where they were needed. Soldiers who would have collapsed from corruption stayed on their feet. Wounds that once meant retreat were sealed mid-fight. Mana exhaustion slowed, then stabilized, including my own. Preparation replaced desperation in ways no last-second miracle ever could. Tess was beside me. Alive. Focused. Unyielding. We moved together with a rhythm forged over years, no wasted motion, no shouted orders, just instinct and trust. Every time the pressure surged, she was there, grounding me, anchoring my focus before the green light could drift toward overload. And my mother was safe. Behind the lines. Coordinating calmly. Directing supply routes and support with quiet authority. I felt her presence not as a fragile point of failure, but as part of the structure holding everything together. The demons pressed harder. They tried again. The same maneuver. The same decisive push that had once broken everything. Elite units surged forward, attempting to split the Allied forces and isolate command points. I felt the green light tense, not in fear, but in recognition. This is it. The difference was immediate. Instead of panic, the armies absorbed the impact. Instead of collapse, they countered. Reinforcements moved before the pressure peaked. Spells layered cleanly. Units rotated out without losing cohesion. Morale didn't shatter. It rose. A shout turned into a chant. A chant into momentum. The battlefield shifted, not suddenly, not magically, but undeniably. What had been a desperate stand became a controlled advance. For the first time, the demons hesitated. I felt the green light settle into something I hadn't known before, not a weapon, not a warning, but a steady current of purpose. It didn't demand release. It didn't scream for sacrifice. It flowed. I reinforced advances. Shielded breakthroughs. Healed entire clusters at once without strain. Not because I was stronger, but because everything around me was working with me instead of against me. This was the moment. The one I had come back for. As the demons were finally pushed back step by step, formation by formation, I understood something that tightened my chest more than any fear ever had. The future wasn't changing because of power. It was changing because we had prepared for it. When the enemy finally began to withdraw, not in triumph but in calculation, I stood amid the battlefield and breathed for the first time since the rewind. We hadn't won the war. But we had broken fate's first attempt to end it. And as the green light pulsed calmly within me, I knew this truth with absolute certainty. The world had crossed a threshold. And from this moment on, the future was no longer written. Epilogue. The final demon falls with a sound that feels impossibly small. After everything, the fire, the screams, the shaking earth it barely makes a noise at all. For a long moment, no one moves. Then the truth settles in. The battlefield is quiet. The sky above us is clear, free of smoke and corruption. No alarms sound. No shadows surge forward. The war, the one that had shaped years of fear, loss, and preparation, is over. I feel the green light ease for the first time since I can remember. Its constant pressure fades, not vanishing entirely, but resting content, complete. Around me, disbelief turns into sound. Cheers rise hesitantly at first, then louder, spreading across the field as soldiers realize they're still standing. We survived. We won. I barely register Tess calling my name. I feel my mom reach for me, her voice cutting through the noise with a clarity that grounds me even as my body finally gives in. The strength I'd forced to hold, the focus I'd demanded of myself, all of it disappears now that there's nothing left to fight. My knees buckle. As I fall, the world blurs at the edges, sounds stretching and fading. But there's no panic. No fear. Only exhaustion so deep it feels gentle. We didn't win through sacrifice alone. We won through choice. Through preparation. Through the courage to refuse a future that had already tried to end us. The last thing I feel before darkness takes me is peace. And the certainty that this time, the future is still ours to live.